Hello, welcome to the July 12th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to just do a quick audio test and we will begin. Bear with me just for a moment. Okay, sounds like my monitoring computer is coming through fine. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can either ask a question in the live chat field or email a question to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And we will try to go through all the questions that were submitted for today's session in order that they come in. If you do not get an immediate response to your question, if we could try to refrain from asking the question, I'll be behind, but I'll try my best to catch up throughout the entire live stream. So you could just ask questions. Now, when asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase that you're running, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, whether it is, version 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which platform, if you're running on Mac or Windows, that would be helpful. And we should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field of the video later tonight. So I'll go through and watch the whole live stream again and do an index so we could look for that. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to set that up and create that website for us, which is a great help to many people. So we're going to give a special thanks to Jan. We have two people that serve as moderators. We have Jazz Dude and Agent K. I think Agent K isn't going to be able to be on the live stream for the whole day today. So we'll have Jazz Dude. I'm sure will do a great job of doing moderation. Neither of them are Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community. So we want to give special thanks to them. Also, we want to give special thanks to for the Cubase Nation Discord, and we know that Jazz Dude does a lot of work with that. So it's a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. And I'll be I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, primarily focusing on Steinberg products. So, and I'll be the host. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have from the Barry Lerve show, says, hello, Greg, and commenting from southwest of France, and asking if you could explain how to move a Cubase installation from a very full hard drive to a new drive. So generally, like, the Cubase program isn't that large. I think it's like 700 or 800 megabytes. So it's not really that big, but probably what happens is, like, the content that comes with it for instruments and samples and loops, that could go up to like 30 gigabytes. So if you wanted to come over here, there's a utility program called the Steinberg Library Manager. And what you could do is come over here and just select, you'll see all the different loops that come with in some of the loop sound sets that come with Cubase, and we could move these to a particular location, and we could set kind of a default location if you wanted to set this by clicking on the setting in the settings cogwheel here. Also, if you wanted to go to like your Groove Agent samples, your Howley Sonic SE samples, these would all show up here, and we can move those to the new drive. So it's really just kind of clicking, say move, and then where you want it to move to your external drive. And then that should free up a lot of hard disk space. That should probably free up, about 28 or 29 gigs of content for you. So give that a shot and let me know if that will work for you. right, so we have Contemplate Music. It's the first time he's been able to join live as he's on holiday. So welcome, and we're glad that you can make the live stream today. We have Benny from Sweden. We see Jazz Dude from Germany. We have Cubase Index that we have Jan. And we have Soren in Sweden. Okay, so we have a question from Dallas LaRue. What is normalization in Cubase? How does it work? And can you show the different ways it can be used? Thanks, Greg. Okay, so let's say if we had an audio file here, and let's say the amplitude was very low, so, and I'll just go ahead and process this particular file here. So let me just do a quick bounce selection. If I select it first, now I'm just going to create a new audio file here with low level amplitude. And we'll replace the event. So let's say we have an audio file here, and a lot of times people will use normalizing to get the gain up of a particular file. So if we wanted to take this, we can go to audio, and then we would go to processes, and we could choose to normalize. So at this point, we could have it normalized to minus, I have it set here to let's say, -1 dB. And this would kind of just change the gain of the audio file. So if I just say -6 dB, we can see that the audio file will change. So let's say -3 dB, you'll notice that the amplitude will get louder. The amplitude will increase in the waveform, meaning that it's going to get louder. And we could choose to normalize either in dB or in loudness units. So if we say, okay, I want this to be -14 LUFS for a particular, for a mastering session or something like that, we could do that there. So basically it's a way to increase gain in your particular audio file, or set the kind of the maximum level to a particular known volume level. All right, and we have Detlef checking in from Dusseldorf, Germany. Okay, so we have a question from Benny. He says, use VST Connect 5.5. It says offline on the files when I'm going to download HD files, customers connected. What could be wrong? Cubase 12 Pro Win 10. Thanks. So I don't have my second computer set up. So basically what you want to do, so let's say if we come over here to create a VST Connect Pro. All right, and let's get to our setup. So, as files have been recorded, we could now, so I don't have anything really connected. I could try to have for Friday's live stream it connected, and then we could show how to transfer the files that are actually, that will be recorded. So basically what that is going to allow you to do is to just take, download the full resolution audio files from the performer's computer. But one thing to make sure is that, the performer software is matching kind of the same level that we're doing here. So make sure that you're, at the same version number between the performer software and your VST Connect Pro. But if you want to send me an email, Benny, to clubcubase@steinberg.de, I can make sure to have my computer set up, a secondary laptop set up, so I could show how to transfer the files. All right, so we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. And Yorgos is saying hi. Uno Memento from sunny Finland. All right, we have Crocante from Los Angeles. Good to see you back. All right, so we have from Contemplate Music. Why the hustle with changing of the license location? What was wrong with licensor? Now I have all stuff on the dongle and 2 apps, Cubase and Wavelab on the local machine. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of people that didn't want to purchase Steinberg software because it required a USB-E licensor. And having USB-E licensors in like educational facilities was going to be problematic for handling licensing requirements. So I think, you know, since January of this year, you know, we've migrated a lot of our major programs over, including Dorico, Cubase, Halion, Wavelab. So, you know, Cubase 12 and Wavelab 11.1 will all be working, as well as SpectralLayers Pro 9 and the latest versions of Groove Agent and Backbone, and we'll see more coming. So it's, you know, they announced it, you know, over a year and a half ago that this transition would be occurring. So I don't think it was a big hustle in doing that. Many people wanted it to happen earlier. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream, as well as Michael Pierce. Okay, we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a keyboard shortcut to be able to use the pre-filters in the channel settings without having to activate them previously with a little white circle next to them? Thanks. Okay, so let's say if we wanted to come over here, let's go to, let's say, our EQ. We wanted to activate the pre. So one of the things that you could do if you have just the setup for like quick controls, I think if we go to like the default quick controls, so if you have a, I'm not sure if, so it's not a keyboard shortcut, but if you go to the volume pan, you could adjust kind of the quick controls right here, and you can have the low cut on and off and the low frequency on and off. But let's see if there's, so it can be done through quick controls using any control surface or MIDI faders, but let's see if there's a way to just get to the key commands. And let me just get the correct terminology that they use on the channel. So if we wanted to, so, you know, using just the quick controls, we could do that. So let's see if we can assign it to keyboard shortcut as well. Let's see if we go to the mix console. So I don't see it as a, just maybe in there, but I don't see it as a particular function, but you can just set it up with quick control. So if I wanted to go, let's say if I have my nano control, I'll come here and let's set this nano control for quick control mode. So as soon as I go to my nano control, I can have my volume pan. I could turn off my low cut filter, and let me just see if it's, and then you can set the frequency here. So let's go for that particular channel. So we can see we could turn it on and then adjust the frequency using the remote controls. But let's see if maybe we can find it in. Okay, so maybe under input filters. And see if we can find this quickly. So it doesn't look like a quick control, but you can't, or it doesn't look like a keyboard shortcut, but you can do it through the quick controls. So once again, if you go to like the mapping assistant here, we could just see kind of the input filters. And so if we go to like the selected track, you get to input filters, and then here you can see the high cut frequency, high cut on. So I'll just do one more quick search to see if there's a keyboard shortcut for that, but you can access it through any MIDI remote. Yeah, I don't see it as a keyboard shortcut, but sorry about that. All right, so we see a comment from Barry Lerv. It's about moving content. And it's as easy as that. Thank you. I thought like that I'm dead scared to upset my installation. Thanks once again. So you're welcome. All right, so we have Dejan from Serbia. Okay, and you ask, after last update, I lost Cubase additional content. How can I get it back? All right, so if you can let me know exactly what additional content that you had, but you may want to, if it's like for your different content, like let's say loops and stuff like that. If you had it before, you may want to go to your media bay and then go to VST sound or the factory content. So if you just come over here to VST sound, make sure that all of these are checked, and then you might have to just go through and rescan the discs but that should take care of it if it is installed on your system. So if you hit F5 or go to Media Bay, at that point, you could just on the left-hand side, and if you don't see it left-hand side, click here in the upper right-hand corner. So we could see kind of the left-hand side, which will give you the directory tree, and then you can see your user content, factory content, but VST sound. So you could come through right over here and make sure all those are checked and make sure that it's set, and then you could rescan the disk if necessary, if it's been changed. So give that a try and let me know. All right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Thanks for joining us. And Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. So I'll apologize in advance. I may be interrupted by my son later. He's home over the summer. He got home from tennis camp today. All right, so we see David Reuter and Kristen Parisi from Nashville from Big Tent. So great to see you guys on the live stream. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so I see a question. So when playing MIDI, it's put before the grid. How to fix that? So it could be, there's a couple things. If you're on Windows, that, it could be. So if you go to like your MIDI port setup, make sure, you could see, and you may see on a Windows where you could choose between like MME drivers. So if you're using Windows, you may see, I think it's if you go into the MIDI port setup here, you may see duplicate MIDI drivers. You could also see if when you record MIDI data, if it shows up before the beat. One way to determine if it's like an actual MIDI controller that is misbehaving or if it's just the system. If you open like Option or Alt plus K. Sorry, just get this set up. That will give you a keyboard. So you can see if you record using this keyboard, if this comes in on time as you record, then it's going to be something with your particular MIDI controller. On the Windows platform, you could sometimes have like older Windows XP type of MIDI drivers, and sometimes you may have two different types of MIDI drivers where one may be wrong to use, and you may just have to turn it off, and it may be where you see an ignore port filter. So I think if you go to the studio setup and go to MIDI port setup on the Windows platform, you may see a little thing that says ignore port filter. Try that. And also one other thing to check is when you go to your studio setup and come over to, let's say the audio system, you could adjust, make sure that you have adjust for record latency, turned on, and then you could also just, check, and you may have some like a MIDI offset here on a Windows platform. So those are some things to kind of check to see. But see if you get the same exact behavior if you're using kind of the software keyboard, or if that's the same, then it could be a plugin that's not giving the correct delay compensation. You could also come to the lower left-hand corner of the transport and turn on constrained delay compensation right there. So give those things a try. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Please tell us how to make microtonal music in Cubase. 22 TET or 19 TET would be cool. There must be an option, and I can't find it. So if you could show us anything that will help with that. So let's say if we have, and it could be depending on how the instrument is responding to it. So VST 3.5 instruments like Howling & Sonic, Pad Shop, Retrolog. If you come over here, so most MIDI may not, may be kind of more 12 tone based. But here, if we go to Microtuner, so now we could just see that we will have, different presets. So let's say if I wanted this to be, like, so if I wanted to come here and just adjust the different tuning scales, we could adjust here. So you could just kind of come over here and for each one, but a lot of times, it could be up to the instrument, how it's doing it. And some instruments, I would say a lot of instruments won't necessarily follow. So now if you want, or if you want it to be more pure major, so we could come over here and do so that you could adjust your tuning temperaments there. So those are some of the things that you're able to do. So try experimenting with like the Microtuner plugin. All right, so we see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so we have a question. Is there a difference between using multi-sends versus multi-output for doing parallel work? Okay, so let's say if we're doing kind of parallel processing. So let's say if I wanted to do so there's a couple different ways to kind of do parallel processing. Some people will, send to, different group channels. So let's say I want to take all of my drums here. So I'm going to create 2 group channels. Okay, so let's add 2 group channels. So this would be technically, if you were to be really precise about this, where it's going to be more kind of phase relevant to it, we would probably just come to our drums here. So let's say we have group 1, group 2. So if we use sends, realize that it's going to actually, go from this signal slightly before it goes to the next signal. It kind of goes in order of the sends. So, the difference could be incredibly negligible and really nitpicky more conceptually. But like my friends in Nashville that are like really into parallel processing, what they do, so that they don't affect, they generally don't use sends, but they'll use the direct routing. So we can say, okay, I just want to come here. Let's activate Q-Link. And I want to now send this to group 1. And then from this little drop down menu, we'll say direct routing, summing mode on. And now I'm going to route this to group 2. So, and then we turn this on. So now we could have so I'll check that. So now we'll come over here and activate. Make sure it's checked. So now this is kind of, the direct routing is kind of going out to two different. So this is more of a traditional parallel because it's not contingent upon the other tracks from the sends. I would say that the audible difference is fairly negligible if you use sends versus like direct routing. But there could be like some, minor a millisecond of timing difference between tracks going out from the top send to the bottom send. So just shut this off. So, but but try it. I don't think that if you sent these to two different groups using, because everything is kind of delay compensated, that it would make that much of a difference. But some people prefer to use direct routing for parallel processing. So, but see if it makes a big difference. I don't think it will make a big audible difference. All right, so we see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. All right, so to see, can you explain difference between original and crack? So I'm not sure if that's with like a software piracy thing. So maybe like a crack version would be an illegal version that's not licensed properly to be run, but I'm not sure what context you mean is from Art Tones. So we don't want a crack software. All right, so we see, hi, is it possible to see the chord name I'm playing? So, if you wanted to, let's say if we have a MIDI part, so I'll just jump back to a different project here. All right, so let's say, if we have a chord track, like if you wanted to populate the chord track, you can come here. And if you have MIDI input, you can play a chord and then your Cubase will act up. Sorry about that. And you could have the chord automatically, reflect directly what's going on there. But if you wanted to see, like, as you're playing chords in, I'll show you how to do that, like in the key editor as well. Just get this project open. Okay, I'll just check my audio connections again here. Okay, so let's say if I was just playing kind of a Rhodes part here, and I was in the editor, so I'll go ahead and we could go to the edit page here, and I think you want to have the status line. So, and I think if we just start recording, all right, and I'll just All right, so if I was just coming here, we can see the current chord display. So I think if we, and let me just enable record in the editor. And let me just see if I can get it. And I'll just set my MIDI record mode to merge. So as we kind of come over here, we can now see the chords that have just kind of been recorded in. So you can see the current chord display. And I think there is a way that you could have that kind of monitor in real time as well. But if you just kind of, so once it's kind of been played in, you could see the chords right here in the actual editor. So let me know if that helps. All right, so you see Benny wants people to hit the like button. All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted me and my family 1 gallon of lemon meringue pie ice cream. So that sounds wonderful. Thank you. It's a nice hot day here. All right, so we have Odavali. Thanks for joining us again. All right, we have Matt Elston checking in from London. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. My chat field just jumped on me, so I'm just kind of finding back where I was. All right. Okay, so we have a question. Hello, I do have a limitation for sidechain compressor. There's a limit of only 10 channels that I can attach to the sidechain, I guess. Is there any solution for that? So I guess you could send, so if we wanted to put a sidechain on, most of the time you might do sidechaining on 1 or 2 different sources, but let's say I'll add some audio tracks here. So let's say I'll add 6 audio tracks, and we wanted to do side chaining. So let's come over here. Let's just put on, say, quick compressor. All right, and when we go to our sidechain input, so I think the most I've done in sidechaining is 2 different sources as a sidechain. So I guess you could always duplicate the track or send it to a group. So there we have 13 different sidechain inputs. So let me know if I'm doing it differently than you. Let me just, there's a limit of only 10 channels that I can attach to the chain. Is there any solution for that? It was from, I think, Gadizana or Gadizana. So let me know if you did it, if I did it differently, but I just added 13 to that particular compressor sidechain input. So again, if we come here, so we have audio 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 through 13. So let me know if you did it differently. All right, so you see Benny is just saying that his new DAW mixer, the Icon Pro G2, works 100% fine. He's going to order the expander for it. He highly recommends it, so thanks for letting us know. All right, so we have a question. Cubase 12 artist, Windows 11, greetings from Chicago. How do you take one track audio MIDI from one project to another project? So I think, I'm not sure if artist has the, where you could come over here and say import tracks from project. So that's, and then you could choose a particular project here. So it may not be in the artist version. If you wanted to, so that's one way. You could also just right click, and if we come over to export selected tracks, so we could export selected tracks, and we could also import a track archive. So that would be one method of doing it. So you could export to selected tracks, but if we have multiple projects open, so say if I go to this project, so I'll just choose not to have this project active, but I could just take audio from, you know, like in MIDI data from one project and drag it into another project. So if I want to take all of these tracks here, you know, I could just drag these directly into the project window, and you can do that for MIDI as well. So there's a couple of different ways. Let me know if that makes sense for you. So you could try the import tracks. That might be a Cubase Pro thing only, but I think you could export selected tracks and then import the track archives, or just drag and drop from one project. Open two projects and drag and drop from one to the other. All right, so we see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. Thanks for joining us again. All right, we see Captenergy Music from Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see, hi Greg, what's the quickest way to create a small fade in, fade out to rendered audio? Okay, so let's say if I have this file rendered here as audio. So one way is just to grab, you know, if you just used a range tool and then hit the letter A, so it just left a little bit at the beginning and at the end. So I just select it with a range tool, and then I hit the letter A. That we'll see that's done a small fade in, fade out outside of the selected range. So if you want to, you know, just come directly here, we could, just grab the fade handles themselves. So if you wanted to just, write a fade, you could just select and go to, processes and just fade out. And if you wanted to actually write the fade into the file, at this point you go to processes to fade in, and that will adjust kind of the fade in, fade out of the particular file. So that's a couple of ways to do it. So if you need it to be kind of permanently part of the file, I would process it. If it's just kind of for playback, I would choose to, select the range and leave whatever range you want at the beginning and end and hit the letter A, and that will apply fades outside of the selected range. So the end will fade out and the beginning will fade in. Okay, so we have a question from David Reuter. How do you quantize the tail end of MIDI notes in the MIDI editor? I know selecting Q will quantize the starting point, but how do you quantize the end of that note to a grid point? Okay, so let's say I wanted to quantize the lengths of all these notes here to whole note. So I'm going to come over here and let's set our quantized value for whole note. Let's go to edit. And we go to quantize here, we could just say advanced quantize. We could say quantize MIDI event ends. And now each of those will quantize to the nearest whole note value. So once again, just come over to edit, to advanced quantize. We could say, quantized MIDI event length. So we can now make them all quarter notes. Or if we wanted the end to kind of quantize, the end to the nearest like whole note, at this point we could come over to advanced quantize and then we'll just quantize the end. So now each of these will snap to the nearest whole note, quantize the whole note value at the end. So you could quantize the actual length of the notes or just the end position. So it's going to end right at a particular time. All right, so a question from Rick James. Any news on Hallian 7? None that I could really share, so generally I'm, if I'm involved in no stuff, I'm under a non-disclosure agreement until release, but I know that, you can rest assured that it's being worked on actively. So we see Gerald Ely just saying Microtuner, that's a new one for me. So yeah, it's a great one. All right, and we have Brian Grieve Music checking in. Okay, so he says, "Did you see? Oh my God, thank you for the Microtuner tip. It's hidden pretty well. I've been using Cubase for 3 years now and haven't thought of going to the MIDI inserts. You're a lifesaver, so that's good. Yeah, it's a good, fun little plugin. But it may not work, with all plugins aren't capable of kind of doing that. So, but the Hallian Sonic, Retrolog, Pad Shop, Hallian, that will." All right, so we have Radar, the band, saying hey from Texas. Thanks for joining us. All right, and we have Chris Ebitson checking in from London. Thanks for joining, being part of the live stream today. All right, so we just see is there a possibility in the media bay to label more than one sample? Okay, so let's come over here. I'm just going to quickly record some audio files. Okay, so let's come over here, and I'm just going to go to the pool, make sure I'm in the right, what folder I'm in. Okay, so I will come over to Media Bay. And we'll come over to this computer. Let's go to Documents, Projects, to jump off. Okay, and these are all the files that I just recorded. So let's see if we could. All right, so let's see if we go to maybe the pool window and see if we can do it there. I know Nuendo has some renaming capabilities, but let's see if I could do it across. Yeah, Nuendo has functions for renaming multiple tracks. Like you can come here and add different functions. There's a kind of a project renamer function in Nuendo, but I don't think it's in Cubase. So you might have to do it kind of one by one. But if you're in Media Bay and if you wanted to come over here and change some different attributes, okay, I wanted to select these and let's make them all 2-star, 1-star, 5-star, or what category that we could select, but I don't think renaming. All right. So we'll move on. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have a question. How can you audio warp a song file on a Cubase project that has a different tempo? Okay. Okay, so I'll just go to project here, and let's say see if I can just do a new project here. I may have 2 songs. It might work. All right, so I'll take 2 different projects here. So let's say, And let's do tempo detection on them. So just 2 tracks, audio. All right, and let's take this file here and do tempo detection. Okay, so we have 2 different tempos. So all you have to do really is just come here, and if we select both files, I will, at this point, just come here and we'll go to audio to advanced. And we'll say, let's just, we'll set definition from tempo, and that's going to basically embed all the different tempo changes into the file itself. So as we come here, so if I move this file over, it's now going to play back at this particular tempo. And as I wanted to just change the tempo of this, so once you've done a tempo detection, then you can so now this file is playing at the project tempo of this file. So if I turn them both on, so it doesn't make any musical sense, but they're playing at the same tempos. So that's how you could tempo warp 2 different tracks. That has different tempo. So once you do the analysis of the tempo, that figures out what the tempo changes are, go to your audio menu, go to advanced, and then set project, set definition from tempo, and that embeds those changes in whatever change that you want at that point. You know, I could just take this file here, say, well, it's playing, and I wanted to take the tempo and just kind of change the tempo, make it more steady. Or I want it all faster. Or we slow it way down. So you could do all sorts of great tempo warping stuff like that. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so wonderful to see Spike Williams on from Cardiff in Wales. All right, so I just see a question. This is directed to Jazz Dude, but I'll try to answer it. And my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so it says, I have a question. I will try to explain. When in the audio editor window and editing warp markers, is there a way to see a grid that corresponds to the quantize? It would be very useful. So yeah, we could do that. So what we want to do, I'll just come over to this project here. So let's say if we are in our, let's say our audio warp. So if we wanted to see the musical grid, so let's say, okay, I want this to be set to 1/8 notes, or let's say, okay, we'll use quantize. So click on this little icon, and this is in version 12. This had changed. So we'll just see the grid type, and we could say show and hide grid, so that as we come over here, we can now have kind of our warp marker. So we go to free warp. We can now just have this kind of automatically line up based on the musical grid. So we come here and say, okay, I want that note, I want this note, I want this. So now we can have that. So if we hide that, you may not notice the grid lines show up. So just enable show hide grid lines right here. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, Gareth. Hope you and your family are well. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. I'm having a lot of dropout with my UR22 in Windows, not in Cubase, but when watching YouTube videos, for example. Do you have any idea where the problem is? So it could be that sometimes, there are certain things that could cause interrupts into the audio playback stream. So one of those could be like, a notorious one is kind of Wi-Fi. So make sure that, you could check to see, it might be like your Wi-Fi driver is conflicting with the audio playback, and that could cause dropouts. Sometimes when people go back and forth between their DAW and watching stuff on YouTube, it may be switching sample rates all the time. So check to see if you have it set to a consistent sample rate as well, because that may cause some of your issues. All right, so we see Gareth is in the garden with Greg, laptop, Focusrite interface, and the sunset. Sounds like a good spot to be, Gareth. All right, so I just see from Brian Grieve Music, I have a problem. Windows taskbar is active in Cubase, and I cannot turn it off. I have tried to lock it, hide it, etc. It pops up when I move the mouse to the bottom of the screen every time in Cubase. So, I don't think it's a Cubase function that's going to do it. I don't have, I'm not on Windows to kind of show, but, when I go to my bottom area, the taskbar really kind of only shows up, if I'm trying to remember if I, actually click and go to the very, very bottom, that the taskbar comes up, but it's kind of an operating system issue, not necessarily a Cubase related one. All right. So we have a question. Is there a way or / tip to close all opened lanes tracks at the same time? It's a bit annoying when you have edited many automations and want to close one by one. So let's see if we have. I'll just go to a project and duplicate it to kind of create multiple. See if it's still in my active list. No, all right, so let me just open it up manually here. No, it's not the one. Okay, this one. All right, so let's say I have this with a number of lanes open, so I will just go ahead and duplicate this track. And let's duplicate the track so we have, let's say, all of our lanes opened here, and I want to close all lanes. So let's see if we could do it maybe using the project logical editor. So we'll just say our container type is equal to a track. All right, so I just said lanes active toggle. Okay, so let's just say, all right, so now I've opened all the lanes, and now let's say if I set to disable, I can click here and all of my lanes are closed, or if I wanted to just toggle back and forth between open lanes and toggle between all lanes being closed. So if you, and I'll go ahead and save this as a preset. So we want to, in the operation, we want to choose transform. Container type is equal to track operation, lanes active, and you could choose to toggle, to enable, or disable. So all right. So let me know if that works. All right, so I just see a question. I think it's from Luis Lopez. Let me just, so just saying, sorry if the question is not really on topic. Sorry if I missed a question. I'm just kind of scrolling back. But if I missed your question, my apologies. And I'm just scrolling back and see if I see your question. But if you want to ask the question again, if I missed it, just retype the question in. Sorry about that if I missed it. Okay, so we see from Gadizana, says what you did here solved the problems. Thank you. So I think that's with the side chain. So. All right. So we see question, how does Cubase recognize your computer name? My Steinberg account shows Cubase installed on 2 PC, but I only have one computer. So I'm not sure if it's... So probably if you go to your account.steinberg.net, you could see the different computers, and you could, try to deactivate one machine that you're on and see. And if you go back to your account.steinberg.net, you could see which one was deactivated. So if you go to the Steinberg Activation Manager, you could deactivate it. And if you see two different names, I'm not sure if it does it by the, I don't think it's by the administrative account on the computer, but you could try that and try to deactivate it on your one and then just activate it back. And then you could see which one that computer is. And then you know that you could deactivate the other one. So. All right, so we see question, how to join the Google Hangout, or it's super selective, first come, first serve. So all you have to do, this is kind of the live stream, so all you have to do is ask a question. So, and we go in order of the questions. So just ask questions and we'll get to them. All right, so we see Westar is back. So thanks for joining. Glad you can make it back. All right, so we see a nice comment from Brian Grieve Music, says, love these live streams. I try to be here as often as I can. You do a great job, Greg. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Okay, so just see from Best Korean Jesus, I got a few Groove Agent kits during the sale, and there are multiple multi-page kits. Is there a way to utilize a hardware controller presets to change the note mapping, as some have 5 or 6 pages? So if you, let's say, I'll come over to maybe one of the bigger kits. I'll just add... Just add a Groove Agent SE here. So these are usually pretty big to mark up minimum. All right, so, one thing that you could do is, let's say we have kind of a large kit here. I'll just turn this up a little bit so you can hear it. All right, so even if we have kits that are kind of out of the particular range, I think one of the things that you can do, so if it's a acoustic agent, I think if you click on MIDI follow on off, that as you hit the sound, it will just automatically go directly to that bank. So if I come over here, we can see that's in bank 5. If I hit this note, we can see that bank 3 is automatically activated. And as we go up, bank 4, bank 6. So if you wanted to just quickly go to where you are, you could do that. But if we go on the kit here, we could just say, okay, once we activate this little icon, use hardware controllers, at this point you could also just edit learn trigger note. So if you just come here, you can now just send a particular MIDI note message, and that will assign that MIDI note to that particular pad. And if it's a more of a beat agent kit, then you could just, again, kind of do the same thing. So if you just click right here, use the hardware controller, then you could edit, you could assign the MIDI notes here, or just do an edit learn MIDI notes. Let me know if that works for you, Best Korean Jesus. You see Michael Teams is saying Nick is playing hooky today, so maybe he'll watch it offline. All right, so we have a question. So a question about render. So when I record a lead from an analog synth, I do render to the audio. Sometimes the render output go to stereo. Sometimes it's mono. Why? So it could depend on if you go to, so I'm not sure if it's the same instrument, but if you go to the audio connections here, so it could be that when you go to the external instruments, make sure that when you add the external instrument, so you could, set the number of, mono and stereo return. So, so maybe one, if you had two different instruments, maybe one was set for one mono return as opposed to one stereo return. So maybe it's that, or if when we do this, so say when we go to your return bus at this point, we only have one channel activated of the two, that might cause it as well. So make sure that you have the configurations if you're using it as an external instrument. And if you're not using it as an external instrument, make sure that if you're just kind of recording it as audio into your audio interface, that it's set up for either a stereo or mono track that you want. It sounds like you have it set up as an external instrument, I assume, if you're rendering in place. All right, so we have Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from Jan. Can Greg show using SpectralLayers how to remove vocal from a song and then create two tracks, a vocal and instrumental tracks? Sure, let's go ahead and give it a shot. Try to do something that YouTube doesn't ding me on, so let me just... Let me just see what this song is as an old project. Why is the mystery so deep? Tell me what. Okay, so let's come over here. I'm going to take this and let's go ahead and separate the vocal. And we can do this with the SpectralLayers 1 that comes with Cubase. So we'll come over here and go to the extension and go to SpectralLayers. All right, so now we're just going to double click on it, and I'll go to process, or to my layer menu, and we'll say unmix stems. And I'll just do vocals, and this may take just a little bit of time. So basically what this is going to do is an analysis and kind of remove the vocals. And then what it's going to do, it's going to take that vocal, and you know why it's called spectral layers is basically it's going to create a different layer. So we're going to have just an instrumental vocal layer and a vocal, or just an instrumental layer and a vocal layer. So we could play them both together, and we could see different colors. So I'll just have this do it. I've never tried it on this file before. I was doing some spectral editing using SpectralLayers 9 on a mastering project recently. It's pretty scary, some of the stuff you could do, like taking toms down in volume in a 2-track mix and taking solos down in volume. So everything that you didn't think you'd ever be able to do. All right, so let it go through its process here. We'll just let this continue to process. This is basically, I always refer to this process as almost like taking the eggs out of a cake after it's been baked. We see Mitch Michelle from England. Thanks for joining, or from Michigan rather. Thanks for joining. Okay, so we almost have our new layer. So we'll see that we have kind of our track here. That's going to be layer 1. And then we're going to have just a vocal layer. Okay, and I'll make this a little larger so we can see that we'll have... So if we wanted to mute the... So now if I wanted to just drag this layer out, I can just add it to the project, and now this is the instrumental track. So now I have just a vocal track and then just the instrumental track, just like that. And you could do that with SpectralLayers 1. That's included with like Cubase Pro and I think Cubase Artist as well. So we see from Matthew Voss, hi, new Cubase user, that tempo work was inspiring, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty great what you could do with tempo stuff inside of Cubase. So we see from Soren just a comment, I wish there was a better way to see that version of software needs update. Today, Groove Agent stopped working completely because it was outdated. Download assistant improvements can be done. So yeah, I know that Steinberg's aware of that and realize it's a kind of a big, it seems like a small thing, but it's a big process of coming up with new download systems, and then to make sure that it's compliant with all sorts of different governmental agencies throughout the world, to make sure it's not like automatically looking into you, and privacy concerns as well. So. All right, so we see that Nick has made the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Rudy Bacas checking in from Seattle. Thanks for joining us today in the live stream. Okay, so we have a question. Can you add audio tracks with pre-installed plugins? So yeah, we'll show you how to do this. So if you wanted to have an audio track, so say we add an audio track here, and I wanted this with okay, so let's say we want this, and really all you had to do is you could save this as a track preset. So you say save track preset, and we'll just call this July 12th. Hit OK. So we'll come over to our media bay, and then if you wanted to right click, you could say load track preset. And then if you wanted to, you could go to your July 12th preset right here, and then you could just come over here. So let's say, or we could say add track using track preset. So let's say we say using track preset, and then we could just come over here and we'll just say we could search for July 12th. And then we can just add a track using our preset. So if I wanted to look at this and we open up the channel, you can see that the plugins I've added and the EQ will automatically be preserved. So. All right, so just see from Odavali, I have no longer the ability to save new presets in all the sections. So if it's like, if you don't have the ability to, so let's say if we come over here and we wanted to, save the track preset, which I just did, or if I wanted to save this EQ. So let's say if I just wanted to now come over to save the preset. And come over here. So now if we wanted to load presets, we can just come right over there. So I'm not sure what would cause that. Maybe, I'm not sure if it's maybe like an administrator issue. that's causing that, but you could check to see, maybe try running Cubase as administrator, right click on it and make sure you're running as administrator and see if that makes a difference. You see Michael Teams is on top of it with his ice cream distribution. So you see a question. Hi, Greg. I run Windows 10. Is it better to upgrade to Windows 11 or better stay on Windows 10? So generally, I try to stay. Personally, I try to stay on the operating system that comes with my computer as long as I can. Unless there's like some super compelling reason. So like I'm still running Windows 10 on my personal computer. I'm probably 2 operating systems behind on my work computer on macOS, primarily because of our IT policies. But I don't think that there's any huge performance increase from going to Windows 10 to Windows 11 in Cubase, other than maybe like your personal satisfaction. Maybe there's some cool things. But probably, I think you'd probably be fine staying on Windows 10. I know you probably, at times, we could just keep getting, messages on Windows that, you should upgrade to Windows 11. You should upgrade to Windows 11. So, and personally, I had, like, when I was going from Windows 7 to Windows 10, I did the update, where it kind of updated my Windows 7, and that was causing all sorts of weird system instabilities. So I eventually just reformatted the whole drive and did Windows 10, and that worked phenomenally well for me, and I didn't have any issues. So I would say if you have a stable Windows 10 system that, unless you really want it, Windows 11, I would stick to Windows 10. So. Okay, so I have a question. If you want to play songs as a DJ in a project on a fixed tempo, but every audio song file has a different tempo, how do you make those songs play at the project's tempo? Okay, so let's say, and we'll just go back to new project here. Okay, so let's say I have 2 different tracks here. And again, we'll do our tempo detection. And I'll just do a quick. All right, and I'm going to do the tempo detection for this file. So let's say these are 2 different tempos. All right, so we get a project to tempo detection. All right, so let's say these are 2 different files, 2 different tempos again. Okay, so all you have to do is make sure that once you have the tempos created, so we'll come here. So once we determine what the tempo is, I'm going to select both of these files, and we're going to say, let's again go to audio, to advanced, and we'll say set definition from tempo, because we need to actually have kind of what the original files were. So at this point, if I wanted to, you know, have this be like a steady tempo, so let's say if I want this to be 140 for both tracks, so this is slowed down. So this is the original tempo, and now both of them were playing back at the new tempo. All right, so let's go to the end here. So as we do this, now if I make them both 156 beats a minute, we could just have this. And now the new one will play back at 156 beats a minute, so the same exact tempo. So it's going to be same tempo between two of them. So once you figure out what the tempo is, then go to audio, to advanced, to set definition from tempo. And that's going to basically embed all the tempo changes in, so that when you make it play back the same tempo, you change the tempo. At that point, it's going to take into account all the timing and tempo irregularities of what kind of makes the music musical. At that point, we could just, you know, match up the tempos very easily that way. So let me know if that works. All right, so just reading through comments. So we see a great comment from Jazz Dude, just never, trust me, never change a running system. So. And once again, if you've learned something new, make sure that you do hit the like button, and that allows us to continue to do these live streams. So Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, great to see that Lola says hi from Gareth. Please give her our best. All right, so we see from Best Korean Jesus. Sorry, and then my chat jumped on me. I say I have lots of questions in my future. That the MIDI follow is what he was looking for. and Best Green just says, learning things I didn't even know I needed to know. Thank you, Greg. You're welcome. Okay. All right, so we see Pablo Vasquez from Galicia, España. So we have the whole Hot Mess contingent online. That's great. Glad you can make it, Pablo. So Gareth saying SpectralLayers can also fix the guitar that Jimi Hendrix burned. It actually plays okay. I've touched that guitar. It's owned by Dweezil Zappa. So. All right, Pablo made the live stream foul, so we're going to throw a penalty flag for just mentioning coffee during the live stream. So. All right, so we just see a question. How come we can run Groove Agent dongle free, but the expansions, any timeline for the expansions? So, they're kind of coming in, I don't know of an exact time frame for the expansions, but I know all the expansions, I believe, will work on soft e-licenser too. So you always had the option to have those on soft e-licenser, but I think they will be migrating. I will see if I could get a more an updated timeline and maybe when some of the expansions might be going. All right, so we see Pablo's waiting for his tour mates. We appreciate Jazz Dude doing his vigilant moderation. So we see from the sound bar, it says, as the stream is about to end, I'm just tuning in. So I think we have about 2 more hours to go. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, so we'll have a ways to go. All right, so still reading through comments here. All right, so we see a nice comment from the soundbar. You guys are best doing this amazing support here. It's sometimes hard to express the problem, so this is gold. So hope it's helpful for people, or I've wasted a lot of time. So, all right, so we see Gareth just saying that Cubase 12 is the bomb. So that's great. So we see Gareth just saying he has Windows 10 and Windows 11 on 2 different systems, and they both run great for him. So. All right, so we just see a question. Can you attach a custom key command to a custom track preset? So in other words, when you use the key command, the track preset populates without needing any further menu library selection. So I don't know of a way of doing that, but a lot of people that are kind of always working with that will just choose to kind of start off with a particular template, and then using the template, then once they have that done, you could have everything kind of stored within the template. Okay, so we have a question. Where can I see the schedule for upcoming streams? So generally, it's going to be on Tuesdays and Fridays, starting at the same time. So that starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So, and if I'm traveling or have like a work commitment, like I've had a NAMM show this month and it took a couple days off for 4th of July for a quick family trip, I'll let everyone know. But generally, it's going to be Tuesdays and Fridays, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So I believe that's 6 p.m. in London, UK, 10 a.m. in Los Angeles, Central Europe at 7 p.m. All right, we see Pablo's had to go back on the tour bus, so we're glad he could join us for a little bit. Okay, so we have a question. It says, I have terrible doubt when I record in direct monitoring. Does Cubase take into account the delay and synchronize the recording with the song? Thank you. It does. So you don't have to have any concerns with that. So yeah, so that's recorded at the correct time, so no problem at all. All right, so we have a question from the soundbar. Is there a way to undo changes with automation of insert effects cause they're not listed in the history? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so let's say if I just want it to come here and I was... so if it's automation, you could always undo the automation. So let's say I'll just automate... We'll just automate this track here a little bit. I'll just put a... insert on. So let's say if I'm here and I just wanted to go to all right, let's say our compressor. So now as I play here, let's say if I've just made changes, and I adjust the change here, so let's say I've made all these changes. So if we go into like the mix console history here, and if we open this up, we can see these little undo options. So if you hit Option Z, we can now undo all the changes that I've made, including adding the insert. And if we wanted to just come back, or if we're in kind of our full mix console, we could go to our edit history. So at this point, I could, we'll go to our particular track. Let's go to, let's say, our insert, and then I could just come back here. And as we do this, we have kind of a separate undo history for the mix console. and for plugins. So, and instead of Control or Command Z, just use Option or Alt Z, and then you could have kind of, you know, any changes you've made in plugins. If it's automation and you've automated it, it will just kind of show up as automation data, and then you could, you know, just simply come around here and say, okay, I just want to delete that particular automation. So, but if it's just adjusting like plugin parameters, use these little undo, redo for the mix console, or in the full mix console, you can see the edit history tab. You can just come right over here and undo all that. So let me know if that'll work for you. All right, so Gareth is saying whack-a-like. So also great to see Graham Witcher on the live stream. All right, so we see DCA Mitch 00. Thanks for joining us, and we hope your mom gets better. Glad that you're able to help out. Okay, so we have a question. What is the best way to set randomized MIDI, like velocity, nude, maybe note, or random fewer selections? All right, so if we have MIDI data here, so let me just open up quick. Okay, so let's say if I just, and I'll just put this in like a drum editor, so I'll have the same velocity. So, you know, if we wanted to, there's a couple different ways of doing it. One is if we go to your MIDI modifiers, you may have to right click and activate MIDI modifiers. But once you go to MIDI modifiers here, we could choose to, and this will take kind of the same note that's playing over and over again, and we could say, let's randomize position, pitch, velocity. So I can say, okay, let's randomize pitch up or down 3 semitones. Let's randomize velocity, and this will do it on playback. So let's say let's randomize velocity by 24 up, 24 down. So if we wanted to now see the reflection of that, we could choose to freeze the MIDI modifiers, so we could randomize, you know, and we'll see our velocity randomized there, our pitch randomized based on those adjustments. You could also go and say, I want to go into the logical editor under MIDI, and we could say, okay, I want to take type is equal to note, but let's say I want to randomize it within a, let's see what note we're in here, an E flat major scale. So I could say, let's take our notes. We're going to choose transform, and we're going to say type is equal to note, and value 1, we could set to, you know, we could say set the random values between, let's say, so I could now just come over here and we could set to random values. So we could do that for pitch. If we wanted to, at the same time, randomize, we could also insert and say, let's take value 2, which is the velocity. And we could say set to random values between 80 and 120. So now I will take just a note to randomize them within from D sharp 1 to D sharp 2 and randomize the velocities between 80 and 120. And I could just come here and just continue to hit apply, and it will just randomize those particular parameters. So let me know if that works. So you could do it kind of on playback from the MIDI modifiers, or if you wanted to actually, embed the MIDI modifiers into the project, at that point you could freeze the MIDI modifiers or use the logical editor. And again, we want to choose transform, take notes, take pitch, take position, and randomize. Okay, so we see nude was nudge. Sorry about that. In the last question. Okay, so we see, hello, Greg, question. What MIDI scripts, Cubase 12 included? I'm thinking of the Chord Nano control. That's included. Novation Launch Control XL needed mostly for quick controls. So, if you're doing something for quick controls, it's super easy to do. So let's come over here to the MIDI remote. So let's say if we click on plus, I think some of the Novation stuff is included. The Nano Control 2, which I have in my desk, I use as well. So you can see the launch key are going to be included. But you could always make one very easily as well. So if you're doing quick controls, you could get that set up in just a couple of minutes, really. So if you wanted to do something for quick controls, it's really very straightforward. But the Chord Nano control will automatically be detected. All right, so we see, hey, Greg, I had a big session this week with a singer, and they wanted to use the audio warp, but I have some issues using it. Can you explain how to use it? So, all right. All right, so what Audio Warp's going to allow you to do is to basically take, to correct kind of rhythmic issues easily in audio parts. Let's say if we're listening. All right, so let's say I want to take this. And we're kind enough to have Gareth play an out-of-time guitar. So, but let's say I wanted to take, these two guitar files here. So let's say, okay, we're going to have just this. I'll just do a quick lead. So one of the things that we could do is kind of populate the warp markers. So we could do this a couple of different ways. One, if we go to hit points, and we'll just say edit hit points, and Cubase can automatically figure out kind of what our threshold is, and we can set the intensity. So we can say, okay, that will be kind of our hit points. And then at this point, we could just say create, and this is kind of enhanced in version 12, but we can say let's create warp markers. So now when we go to audio warp, what we could do is, now that we have these warp markers, we can move this icon. So you see like kind of the little arrows, and we see like that little line just to the left of the left arrow. We can move that so that we can have these elements just kind of snap to being on beat. And if I wanted to show or hide the grid. I could say, okay, we're going to have our grid set, here to eighth notes, or if I wanted this to be set to beat. So now we could see a visual grid, and I can say, this note here needs to be on the grid, and this will automatically snap to the grid. So if you're had a musician that was a little late, a little early, you could just kind of come right over here and just kind of warp those particular notes to, and if you needed to add a warp marker, so let's say you could come here and just double click, and then you could add a warp marker right there. So that will basically allow you to warp that audio to fit into certain rhythmic timing areas. So we see just a question, does anybody here have the original script for Native Instruments Complete Control S61? So I think you might notice that if you go to the Steinberg forums, there is a collection of different remote control devices, but you could always contact Native Instruments and see if they have, because a lot of the controller companies themselves are making the actual MIDI remote scripts, so it works better with Cubase. All right, so we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. Okay, so just see question about expression maps. Where can I get those for ample guitars? So a lot of the libraries have expression maps that are already created that people will freely share. You can make some if you want, but ample guitars, they might have some as well. I know a lot of companies like Vienna and stuff like that, they've, created their own expression maps. So it's usually a lot of the VST instrument companies will create their own VST expression maps. All right, so we have see a question from Lawrence Koch. Has anyone seen an issue with Cubase locks the second time you open it after starting a Windows computer? Been working with tech support, and they are to wipe and reinstall going on since 10.5. So I haven't heard of that particular issue. Maybe if someone else has any insights they could share, but I haven't come across that or heard of that. All right, so we have a question from Luigi. How does Cubase work with direct monitoring? Will always be in sync with the metronome? Thank you. So what direct monitoring does is when it's enabled for your audio interface, the audio signal that's input into your computer is sent directly to the output for you to listen to without any processing going on. So basically it's it's basically going from the input directly to the output. When in direct monitoring mode, you will not be able, if you have like a guitar amp and you're recording a guitar part and you have a software guitar amp, you're not going to hear any of the effects because it's basically bypassing the effects and the audio engine that's going on in Cubase, so that as you listen to it, it's going to bypass that. It could still play back with that as soon as you hit play, it'll play back. But as you're recording, it will just take the signal directly from the input to the output so that you don't have any concerns with latency, and it will be perfectly in time with the metronome as long as the performance is. All right, so we see from DCA Mitch, it says, I remember going to a Cheap Trick concert where the front of house engineer had an input for guitar synth so the guitar player can play synth pads. Would it be a keyboard near the guitar player? So often what it's going to be is a special pickup, like a hexagonal pickup that can take the 6 strings and convert the output from the guitar to MIDI. So, and then you would connect that to like a keyboard. So if you wanted to layer the sounds, you could play that directly from, you could play a keyboard sound directly from the guitar. So like for bands that don't have a traditional keyboard player in the lineup, that could give you some textures on songs that would be hard to get otherwise, especially kind of filling in the sound that people expect for a big production on, you know, that can make a big production. And then you could just simply, you know, do the MIDI guitar and kind of fill in the sounds of what people expect to hear live in concert from the record if you don't have all the musicians. And generally, I see just kind of a follow-up. Are there any pitch tracking plugins that can look at a guitar signal and make a synth sound? So generally, it's mostly hardware-based. You know, I've seen some stuff that will be like on iPad that looks kind of interesting. But I think kind of the best is still going to be basically using like a hardware pickup, like a guitar to MIDI converter pickup. All right, so we see Michael Pierce has offered up his soup recipe of chilled cucumber soup, Persian cucumbers, hopefully olive oil, mint, chives, basil, garlic, salt, Greek yogurt, honey, lemon blend, chill 4 hours and serve with oil and herbs. Sounds good. Thank you for sharing your soup recipe. All right, so we have a question from Jesse Carmichael. Hope you're doing well. You'll be our celebrity attendee. It says, I'm having trouble converting the 44.1K demo projects for Cubase 12 to my 48K sample rate. I'm locked into that sample rate and need help with the conversion. Thanks. Okay, so let's say... let's see. Okay, so we're at 48K. So let's say I want to go 48K to 44.1 here. So what I'm going to do is our audios, and this will be the same process, Jesse. So if we want it to come over here, we'll go to our project menu to project setup. And I'm just going to switch the sample rate here. So let's say, okay, I wanted to go to 44.1. I hit OK. It'll ask me, do you want to convert audio files to new rate? We'll say convert. Do you want to keep the source audio files in the pool directory? So this will allow you to keep the 44.1 and 48K unless you're really strapped for hard disk space. Go ahead and keep it. All right, and we'll get this. Do you want to keep the audio positions at their sample positions? Choose no. And now as we play, everything will play back at 48K, at 44.1. So all the samples all the audio has been converted directly there. So once again, go to your project setup, change the sample rate. You want to say yes to the first 2 questions and no to keep at the sample positions. So, and I hope you're doing well, Jesse. All right. All right, so we see Sable Winters giving thanks to Jan and myself for all that we do. So thank you, Sable. And Michael Pierce and Michael Teams. So. All right, so you see Michael Pierce just saying, so to anyone Waves plugins in Cubase 12 on Mac, scaling is all off on the UI, updated them all, thought it might fix it, but it doesn't. I know the solution is simple, but it can't remember it. Says his PC is fine. So generally, make sure that you have, so on the Mac, generally, and this happened, it's a little more of a standard on a Mac where you have Retina support. So make sure that you have, the Retina support versions of the Wave. So, if it's not Retina support, then that could cause some of the issues. On PC, you could go to preferences, enable high DPI or disable high DPI. And that would generally fix it. But since that's not on Mac, since all the Macs are kind of running Retina displays, make sure that your Waves version is set for Retina displays. Okay, read through comments. See, Best Green Jesus says, loving the MIDI remote editor. Beat Step is basically my budget Elgato. So. All right, so we see question, will they add interface resolutions on Mac? Your screen looks like it's in 1920 PXY, is text readable. My external screen is 2560 PXY, and everything looks tiny, and text are unreadable. So it really could depend on your Mac. So I'm running in 1920 by 1080. So, Cubase will kind of scale to whatever you want. And, the Mac is... like when we go to preferences in your Mac OS, it's a little goofy with like visual displays. So when we come up to displays, you could have, because I'm connected to an external monitor, we can see this, but if you're not connected to an external monitor, it may just say like, big, small, medium. Which doesn't do much good, but Cubase will kind of fit to whatever scale. If you're running a much higher resolution, then the text will be smaller. But one thing that you could do, one little utility that I use, because I like everything at 1080p, because I realize a lot of people watch it on TVs, is I just got a little utility called Switch ResX. And this could, because 1080p isn't a native Apple display format, but Switch ResX can allow you to, basically go to specific resolutions. But, if you have a higher resolution, it's going to get smaller. So, and it will look smaller. So you have to kind of find. All right. Let me see, just got an email real quick. Hang on just a second. All right, so just seeing, we just saw an email pop in from Jesse, whose question we just answered. Okay, so all right, so this is with the sample rate question from 48K to 44.1. It just says the two other messages says the operation will remove offline process history. All edits will be frozen. And another message, do you want to convert the sample rate clip of clips in musical mode. Note that converting them will not affect playback. So what I would do, Jesse, if you were if you were set in musical mode and we're doing this, is maybe I would just choose to bounce the files here. So even if we just wanted to, take each of the files quickly and bounce selection or do a render in place and create multiple new files depending on how big the project is, you could render and place multiple files and create new versions if you wanted to. So basically creating new audio files that don't have musical mode enabled or have the, have offline processes, and then you could just do it like that. So maybe try to render the files ahead of time. So, but it should be that if you say this operation will remove offline process histories, all edits will be frozen. You could say proceed if you wanted to. Do you want to convert the sample rate of clips in musical mode? Note that converting them will not affect playback. So, so there you could say convert, but what you might want to do quickly to make this even easier is if we choose backup project, this will create brand new audio files in a new folder. So let's say we do this, we're going to choose a new folder here. All right, and at this point we could say, okay, we want to make direct offline processing permanent. Yes, we remove unused files. And then at this point, if we back up and then do the sample rate conversion on the backup project, I think that would kind of take a lot of those issues, those warning messages away. So give that a try, Jesse. Thanks for the email clarification. All right, so just see a question. Hello, I need help, please. I have a Mac and I can open up Steinberg Download Assistant. I only get the part where it says sign in. I click it, nothing happens. I reinstalled the same help. So check to see if when you're installing it, because sometimes it may query your e-licenser program or a Steinberg activation manager. And you could, at that point, you may have a window kind of behind a window. So, maybe if you open up the download assistant, so we're here. So maybe if you move this window, you might have another message saying it's opening up the e-licenser program. But you could always, if you go to Cubase 11 download, Cubase 12 download, and I see that Jazz Dude has posted the link that you could download it directly from a web browser as well. Okay, see Michael Pierce wants people to slap the like button, and Benny saying this summer is perfect. Studio work in the daytime and gigs in the evenings, as it should be. Sounds like a pretty great summer. Right, we see Best Korean Jesus asking what cool things people got in the Steinberg summer sale with Groove Agent kits, or I think SpectralLayers is on, and Cubasis. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. What is the benefit of gluing several audio events into a single event? Well, so let's say if I had, so we could turn these into. So let's say if I have this here, and I choose to glue these together, so I'll come here. All right, so now instead of moving 3 separate events, I can move one single event. Now, when we do this, sometimes people are like, oh, I can't do my fade ins and fade outs because this is now, it went from an event to a part. So when we double click, we actually go into the part editor. And at this point, we will have our fades directly in the part editor. And if we wanted to do kind of different comping, we could see our different lanes kind of laid out for us here as well. So, but the main benefit is going to be, just for ease of, moving multiple events that should be, where the timing should be maintained together. That's when you could glue the events so that they could all be moved as one single event as opposed to 3 independent events. All right, so we see Barry has freed up 130 gigabytes on his 500 gigabyte drive, so that's great. Okay, so we see, is there any way to have played audio in pre-roll, record 2 bars, and at the same time a metronome? Okay, so let's say if I'm here, so I think we could just adjust pre-roll. So I'm going to go to my transport and let's activate pre-roll and post-roll. So I'll activate it here and I'll just say 2 bars. Let's say I'm at measure 1. Or say I'm at measure, let's say I start at measure 4. Okay, and now when I hit play, it just rolls back 2 bars. So let me just turn the metronome on. So let me know if that works, if you just want to do pre-roll for 2 bars. All right, so it just says, and this might be a follow-up to that question, in some drops where no rhythmically synths or percussion are playing, I would like to hear the backing pads and metronome at the same time to get in. So yeah, I think that the pre-roll, so again, come over here to the transport setup and make sure that you have pre-roll and post-roll active, and then you could just set the pre-roll, turn it on, and set how many bars you want. I think that should do the trick. All right, so we just see a question. Hey, Greg, I'm having issue with Cubase starting up my sessions. It takes extremely long time for it to load. I'm using the Waves plugins, but it's not that many. Can you help with this issue? So some things that can cause, try to, you could determine like which plugins are, try taking this session and saving it without any plugins active and see if, without any plugins in the session. So remove all plugins and then see what the load time is, and then slowly add plugins in. And it could be one plugin that takes a while to load. If there's virtual instruments with lots of samples, if you're trying to load, 2 gigabytes of, orchestral samples, that could take longer than loading a synth preset. So some of those things may take a difference sometimes. But, try to take the project without any plugins and load it. Just save it as a different name, and then you could probably find which plugin is causing it to misbehave and take a long time to load. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions that were submitted. Let me go to, let's see if there's any more. All right, so I just see from Harry, he says, sorry, pre-roll and metronome while recording. All right, so let's see if I come over. Let's go to add an audio track. I'll activate my pre-roll. Okay, so one trick that you can do with this is, let's say that you'd recorded. If we now come over here, is you can roll back. So let's say if we go to your preferences and we go to record audio. So let's come over here, record audio. You can set this to, I think we can go up to a minute, but let's say I want to do 4 seconds. So let's say we do the pre-roll here. So we're going to activate the pre-roll. We hit record. So we see that kind of kick in. And then, like, let's say you came in just like a bit, ahead of the beat. You can now just roll it back like 4 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever you wanted to. So let me know if that helps, Harry. All right, so let's go to some questions that were mailed in. Thanks for all the great questions. Hope everyone's learned something. If you learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button or that you subscribe to the channel. All right, so he says, question. I have a quick question for you. I'm trying to create a macro to click on reload track preset on a selected track. I haven't been able to find that specific button in the post-process commands. Do you know how I can program that shortcut? So I don't think that is a particular function that can be addressed with the keyboard shortcut. Let's take a quick look. So let's go ahead and add an audio track, and we'll go ahead and use a track preset here. So let's say, okay, we'll go to the one that we created here. So let's come over to, and I think this might also be with an instrument track. So let me just come here. So when I looked for this in the past, it wasn't available. So I'll just save a track preset. Okay, so here's our track preset. So I know a lot of people will unload the track preset. And let's just see if it's... Yeah, I don't think that there's a keyboard shortcut for this. I've kind of requested this in the past. I know it's a way that people will sometimes unload the track preset and save kind of CPU cycles. Let's see if it's maybe in the MIDI remote. I don't think it is. Look one place else, but I'm inclined to say that it's not addressable through keyboard shortcut. But let's see if we can do it in the Project Logical Editor by any chance. I don't think so. Yeah. So yes, I don't think that's available as a keyboard shortcut, but I'll pass it along again as a request. All right, so we see question, is there any way to delete group/effects tracks that aren't used with a macro, etc.? So like the remove unused tracks option. So I think I've done this in other live streams, and I don't know of a way to designate or to select something. Sorry, just had an email pop in, but I don't think that there's a way to determine if there isn't any audio that's being sent to a particular track to delete. When it's deleting an unused track, there's no media on it. But if it's an effects or group channel, it could be that there isn't a way to determine if audio is sent there or not through a macro or Project Logical Editor. So I don't think so. I haven't found a way. All right. Okay, so you see I have a X-Touch as a Mackie control. Is it possible to assign the jog wheel to the clip gain so that left-handed rotation attenuates and clockwise rotation rises the gain? So I don't think we could try, I'll try maybe with the generic remote. So let me come over here. So let's say we have our clip gain, and we want it on this particular. Okay, so we want to kind of emulate that. So let's see if we could do it with the mouse scroll wheel. So if you want to, let's come over here. Let's assign, let's say, something on my nano control here. Okay, so I will just move this parameter. And let's say if we set this to mouse pointer, like AI knob. And let's apply the mapping. That now when I hover over a particular, and this may not be any more beneficial, but if I wanted to, let's say I come here so I could increase the gain. It doesn't seem to, yeah, so I don't know a way to increment, but you can always just very fast with your mouse, just go to the volume control here and be able to adjust there. But I don't know, sometimes the Mackie control limit can be not sending two different bits of information, like to increment or decrement. All right, third question. Among the Mackie control users, there is a well-known problem in that only the 8 tracks of the current fader bank are synchronized between DAW and controller. So if you select a track outside that range in Cubase, this won't be synchronized with the controller. You have to select the new bank in the controller first, which makes absolutely no sense in terms of workflow. This is mentioned as a problem in the protocol. However, Logic implemented a workaround for this, so DAW and controller are always synchronized. Are there any actual plans to make that happen in Cubase 2? Maybe via MIDI remote, etc. So, you can kind of do it already. So let's say if I go to my Chord Nano control here, so you could have it mapped, and it is a limitation of the Mackie control protocol that, that if you select a different track and you initiate the selection from Cubase, that it's not going to necessarily follow. So when I go to, let's say, my MIDI remote here, and I'll sneak over to the Nano control, and this is, $79 controller, and we just say, let's go to mixer. So I use this, that as I want to select my different tracks in the mixer, I could come here, and then like as we bank up and down, that we can see that when I hit the bank buttons here, that the bank is initiating which tracks. So say if I click here, that bank selection will automatically follow. So you could do it inside of the MIDI remote, and I know people say, oh, you should break the protocol and make it work like this, but then, it may not work with every controller that way. So, it is a limitation of the Mackie control protocol. I'll pass it along as a feature request again, but sometimes it's hard to convince people, developers to, don't follow the protocol. And that could come back and have repercussions later on different controllers are utilizing that protocol that may not support it, and some do, some don't. So, so if you don't like that functionality, I mean, you can see that we could do it directly with our Chord Nano control here. I could start, and then the banks automatically we see like the white line indicating the banking functionality. So it can be done in the MIDI remote without any problems. All right, so we had a question, how to instantly duplicate MIDI notes up or down an octave. Okay, so let's show how to do this. So let's add just a MIDI track here. All right, so I'll just my 21st century composition. All right, so I wanted to duplicate this up an octave. So one thing that you could do is, like, if you wanted to, you know, let's say we select all, and then if I hit Shift plus the up arrow, we can move it up an octave, or we could move it down an octave, so the selected note. So we could just kind of come here and move that. But if we wanted to keep the notes at this octave position and move it up an octave, we could do this in the logical editor. So we'll come over to the logical editor. So we'll go to MIDI to logical editor, and we're going to choose to, we're going to transform. And we want to say notes. So we'll say insert. We're going to type is equal to notes. And under the event transform actions, we want to say value 1. We want to add 12. So now, as soon as I do this, it's going to, we'll take the selected notes here. And now I just hit apply. And if I did it right, oh, instead of transform, what I want to do is choose insert. Sorry. So insert, take our notes. And now we could just duplicate up an octave. And if we choose subtract 12, so if we say subtract 12, I'll just come over here and say, okay, we'll hit apply. And now we could just double that note. And then if you wanted to do other things like, okay, we see that if I wanted to take the notes, subtract it down an octave and decrease the velocity by half, I could come over here and let's say we'll take value 2 of the notes and we'll say multiply by 0.5. So now we can see that we can take the notes, knock it down an octave, and have half of the velocity that we have on the other tracks, so on the other notes. So that's how you do it. So once again, we want to choose insert, type is equal to notes. So we're going to take our notes, and we want to choose value 1, which is the pitch, subtract 12 or add 12, up an octave, down an octave. And if you wanted to also at the same time adjust velocity, we could say, you know, knock it down by 50%. So. All right, so we have a question. I'm trying to figure out how to deliver Atmos mixes for evaluation. Sending an ADM file to a client probably won't do much good. Not many people has the resources to play them. I don't know if DA compatible home theater systems can play raw ADM files or only ones embedded on Blu-rays. Got any bright ideas? So I think that there are, I know some people use the Dolby production suite, I think, to do that. But I think Fraunhofer has a free ADM player. So I don't think that the ADMs are going to magically play on a sound bar unless you do go through a Blu-ray. But I think that there is a Fraunhofer utility that will allow you to, you know, to deliver, and I think it's a free player so that you could send that to different, you know, clients if they need to listen to it in Atmos. Hang on one second, my son's knocking. Okay, apologize for the interruption. Okay, so you see a question. Steinberg has stated that Cubase M1 native is not compatible with VST plugins running under Rosetta 2. What about other bits and pieces? What are not technically VST plugins, such as VST Connect Pro, SKI, Remote Cubase IC Pro, and Cubase's Project Importer? It says, by the way, the VST Connect SE is listed as Rosetta 2 in the compatibility list, despite it being part of Cubase Nuendo. Do you think it's fair to claim that Cubase 12 and Nuendo 12 are M1? We need a new name compatible when integral parts of it isn't. So I think that it might be internal stuff. So like I think all the processing is going to be M1 native, but maybe like internal communications to different modules or components of the program might still be running under Rosetta, but that's not necessarily doing processing. It might just say, hey, I'm here for this particular function. So, but I'm not a software developer, but I could check on that if you wanted more clarification, if you want to email me again, Sven. But I think that, all of the processing and all of the plugins, which is going to be more critical than, a Cubase's, project importer, may not be M1 compatible, for any number of reasons, but it's not going to hinder your performance. All right, so let me jump back to... Okay, so we had another question here. Steinberg offers 4 free VSTIs on their website for Hallian, Guitar Harmonics Essential, Alto Glockenspiel, Essential Novel Piano, and Lo-Fi Piano. I downloaded all of them, installed them, but for some reason the Lo-Fi Piano doesn't work in Hallian 6. It does work in Hallian Sonic SE, but not in Hallian 6. The Lo-Fi instrument icon appears in the instrument window of Hallian 6. And I can load the instrument, but I select a sample and drag it to an empty instance in the slot rack. The sample disappears from the slot. I'm running Cubase 12 Pro on Windows 10 PC. All right, so let me just come over here. I'll just see if I have it on my system, the Lo-Fi Piano. I think I do. So, sometimes I've seen like in situations like this, reinstalling it again can't hurt. Also, sometimes I've seen if you go to the Steinberg Library Manager, and if we come over here and, if we go to the details, let's see if we have the Lo-Fi Piano here. So let's say if we go to the details and we go to like this specific slot, go to this location and then sometimes try to right click on it again and open it in go to this location, this path, and try to right click and say open in the Steinberg Library Manager, that may kind of reconnect the Hallian 6 to play the library for you. So give that a shot. All right, let me jump back to our live questions. Thanks for all the great discussions from everyone. Okay, so we see Michael Teams is heading in town for a studio session, so we'll see you on Friday. Thanks for joining us, Michael. All right, so we have a question. Says Greg, I have a problem. I cannot get my Akai 225 pads to play the chord pads. Can you help me? Do I get my Akai pads to control the chord pads in the lower zone? Okay, so if you want it to control the lower zone, so one is, figure out what notes are actually being transmitted by, so say if we go to the chord pads here, I'll just jump to a different project. Okay, so let's come over here to the chord pads. So, all right, so say now. So if I wanted to, so I'm just hitting drum pads in my Nectar controller. But if you come over here to the setup, Soren, and then, so one is you could see what MIDI notes are actually being transmitted. So when I get down to, these are the notes that are being triggered by the chord pad. So when I get down, it's going to be in this particular octave. But let's come over here to, let's see if it's in the pad remote control. I think if we go to, so here we could say, okay, pad remote control range start. So if I wanted that to start at C2, so let's say, okay, I want this to go to B2, and I may have, you could also have different, so, but you can set, you have other ones set here by default for which ones, but check to see if your pads are actually transmitting in the correct range of notes. So as we come over here, you can see where the pad, so as I hit the pads, I can just trigger the chord pads directly from there. So it's really just a matter of assigning, making sure what MIDI notes are transmitting. So it's going to, go C1. And also when you do this, one thing that's easy to do is if you don't have this turned on right here, so make sure that the chord pad is activated. So now, otherwise, when you come here, it may just play the single notes and bypass and just play single notes there. Yeah, so I see also for Soren, so if it's just playing a single note, just make sure that this is turned on. We see Michael Pierce has to take off, get ready for a session tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, Michael. And thank you for generously donating your soup suggestion. All right, so we see Jazz Dude posted the link for the Fraunhofer. right, so we have Hamid from Ghent in Belgium. Thanks for joining us. All right, so just see how can I render out MIDI of a track I've been altering with follow chord track. I want to change some of the notes, but the follow chord track is unpredictable. Would like in a MIDI track. Okay, so let's say if I have a chord track here. Okay, so let's say we have our chord part here. Okay, and I'm just going to drag this down. So, you know, if we have this play, so I'll just, so we have, okay, so we have our chord track and it's going over here, but if says you want to change some of the notes, but to follow the chord track is unpredictable. So maybe if you just kind of take the particular chords here and drag it to the part, that will create the MIDI notes, and then you could alter the voicings. So maybe let me know if that will help. But you know, that way you could turn it into MIDI data if it's just kind of playing back the chords, or if it is an actual chord part. You know, so let's say I've changed the notes here in the chords. Let's say okay, and then if I have this set to follow the chord track, so here we could choose to synchronize the track data or follow it directly. So let's just say, so we could do that, but as soon as we, let's say, I'll come here and let's just solo. I will look at all of the parts. So even as I come here, if I wanted to change this to a G chord, you'll notice that all the notes here will change accordingly. So let me know if that's helpful or if I'm misunderstanding. All right, great to have Derek from Toronto on the live stream. All right, so to see Halion 6 needs a preview for presets. So, you know, sometimes with big samples, previews aren't as fast when you're loading up huge samples, but let's take a look. So I thought we could come over here. Let's just load up, let's say a lo-fi piano. So if you just arrow and then hit enter. But, you know, since it is loading samples and not just synthesis, you know, it could sometimes take a little longer to load than people would expect from a synthesizer plugin. All right, so we see a question. Is it normal that the talkback in a control room only works with a Q? I had to add a Q channel. What is the procedure to set it up? So, generally, the talkback is intended, when you're here, the talkback is intended to communicate with musicians via their headphones. I mean, you generally don't need a talkback to go out over your speakers. I mean, you could have it set up that way if you want it to. But as soon as the intention is like, most talkback microphones, you enable talkback so that it is going out through the Q mix. So, and at that point, it's going out through the headphones because, that's how most talkback systems are set up. So at that point, we need to go into your control, into your audio connections. Let's go to your control room, and you need to have a stereo because that's the destination for the talkback is going to be a Q. And then at that point, so you can say, okay, we want to talk to our drummer. We could just, or the vocalist, we can now communicate with the different vocalist right here and say, okay, they could hear us. Now they can't hear us. So generally that's the intention, is to communicate and talk so you don't have to do all sorts of outrageous routing. And these Q mixes are going to be routed to outputs on your audio interface or to headphone outputs. So if it's just an output on your audio interface, it could feed into a headphone amplifier. Or, you could say in many audio interfaces, you could take the, this output and route it to headphone out 1. These stereo outs will mimic headphone outputs 3 and 4 will go to headphone 2. So you could do internal routing there, but that's really kind of the intention, is to have the talkback go directly to the musicians over their headphones. So you could track. All right, so see Peter from Montreal saying hi to Derek from Toronto. All right, so we see Soren got his chord pad sorted out. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any more that come. If not, we could wrap up a little early. All right, we'll wait just a couple more minutes. There's usually about a 30-second delay from when I talk to when you guys hear it. So you just see, is it possible to apply a global pitch that will affect all VST instruments as well as MIDI channels? So yeah, we'll show you this. You see Gareth is finished with dinner, but let's go ahead and show you. But there is one kind of like track that's not as obvious that a lot of people maybe don't utilize. So let's say if we have, we could add what's called a transpose track. So we're going to add transpose track. So say as we're playing. So I'm going to just come here. So to say, back to the original. Then we're going to go up a minor third. Back to our original key. And that's both for audio and MIDI that we have in the Verve piano.
Our first kiss, there was no regret right after that Garth Brooks show.
So let me know if that works for you for your global pitch. All right, so we'll see if there's any other questions that sneak in. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. Thanks for the kind words, Gareth. Just thank me for another info pack session. And Jazz Dude's also sending a link to the Steinberg summer sale, so make sure you take advantage of that if you're looking for expansions of your VST instruments. I think Iconica is on sale as well, as well as I think SpectralLayers and a lot of instruments and expansion sets. Okay, so we see Graham Witcher just saying transpose track, the revelation of the day. I never knew about that. Yeah, I did a tutorial video on that recently, and everyone's like, oh, when did that come in? I was like, version 3. Like, oh, you know. All right, we'll see if more questions sneak in. And again, we'll be doing this on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Gareth is saying revelation has happened. So now I feel like I've completed my job as part of my live stream today. So Derek Marshall just bit the bullet on SpectralLayers. It's just too awesome. Thanks anyone. Thanks everyone. So yeah, you'll love it. It's kind of voodoo, audio voodoo. So. All right, so I think we're out of questions. I want to thank everyone for the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick, and we will see everyone back on Friday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you on Friday. Thank you so much.